Hey, good morning, Trondheim friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Patio Ponderings. It is a cool but beautiful morning. The sun is shining, and I'm glad to be back outside. So why am I sitting out here by the garbage can of all places? Well, because that represents the truth of our lives sometimes, that sometimes our lives are dirty and gritty and not what we would like them to be. And it goes back to one of the most common questions that I get, both from adults and from kids alike, is why does God allow suffering? Now, there's always going to be a great deal of mystery to the way God does and does not work in the world. And this question in particular will likely never be answered to our satisfaction. But there's a few things that we can say about it. And we're going to start in the story that we had on Sunday. And we'll probably return back to this topic next week as well. So if you were here on Sunday, you remember we heard the story of how Jesus healed a man who was born blind. And I want to start right at the beginning of this story with just a couple verses. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man who was blind from birth. Jesus' disciples asked, "Rabbi, who sinned so that he was born blind, this man or his parents?" Jesus answered, "Neither he nor his parents." So I think this is one of the most important places that we can start in this question. And that is to understand that at least our personal suffering, especially as it relates to our health and a variety of ways, is not caused by our is not caused by our sin. It's not because we've been bad. God does not mete out suffering as a way to punish us. We can go back to Jesus' Sermon on the Mount in Matthew and hear Jesus say this: "He makes the sun rise on both the evil and the good, and sends rain on both the righteous and the unrighteous." And so we begin to understand that we all experience well-being in our life, regardless of whether we've been good or evil. We all experience suffering in our lives, regardless of whether we have been good or evil. And I think that's super important, that suffering in our lives, we cannot say it enough, is not a punishment for our bad deeds, for our sin. That is not how God works. And this is coming out of this story here that we heard on Sunday, and it comes right from Jesus' teaching on the Sermon on the Mount. But unfortunately, our bodies in our world just don't often work the way they're supposed to, and things go wrong. And we do end up suffering. And so here's the other thing that I've been thinking about then with this, is that in our story on Sunday, the man who was blind, his suffering that he might have experienced due to that was only in part because of his physical ailment. The other things that we saw in this story were that he was never, at least at the beginning of the story, people did not talk to him, only about him. And so this man was left out of conversations, even though they concerned him. And he also was resorted to begging to support himself for his own economic livelihood. And so I started to think about this in, could the community have done a better job of taking care of him? Could the community he resided in have alleviated his suffering in some way? And so, in addition to asking the question of why does God allow suffering, do we need to think about asking the question, why do we allow suffering? This is a really big topic, It is complex. It has lots of perspective and lots of nuance. And so we will touch base again on this topic likely next week. In the meantime, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Enjoy the sunshine today. We'll see you on Sunday. Bye.